Hello, and welcome to Litigation Corner, a series where we discuss important issues affecting our community and shine light on successes achieved in the justice system. My name is John Martino, and I am the Director of Litigation for Community Legal Services, a legal aid program that covers 12 counties coast to coast in the middle of Florida. Welcome to Litigation Corner. Each episode, we will focus on a major topic that Floridians are facing. Today, we're tackling something both serious and insidious: elder fraud and scams. Now, we all know the internet and phone calls have made it easier for criminals to target vulnerable people. But what about our parents, grandparents, and loved ones who might not be as tech-savvy as we are? Well, it's worse than you think, and it's happening every day right here in Florida. In fact, according to reports from My News 13 in Orlando, elder fraud cases in Florida have been on the rise, and older adults are among the most at risk of falling victim to these schemes. The Florida Department of Elder Affairs and groups like the AARP are calling it out. And it's not just about losing money. It's full-on attack on the trust and safety of our seniors. So what kinds of scams are we talking about? Let's break it down. First up, imposter scams. Picture this. A senior gets a phone call from someone claiming to be their grandson, and they're in trouble. Maybe arrested in a foreign country or needing emergency funds for a medical bill. It sounds plausible, right? And that's exactly what the scammers rely on: a sense of urgency and a personal connection. According to the AARP Florida, these scams trick the elderly into sending money, often hundreds or thousands of dollars, to a person they've never met. If you want an example of how real these kinds of scams can feel, watch the movie Thelma on Hulu and Disney+. It's a gripping film about an older woman who falls for an imposter scam. The fraudster convinces Thelma that her grandson is in jail due to a traffic accident and needs money to post bail. Thinking she is talking to her grandson and his lawyer, she sends thousands of dollars to a P.O. box belonging to the people scamming her. But once she realizes she's been tricked and realizes there's not a great likelihood that law enforcement can help, Thelma takes matters into her own hands, jumping on a friend's scooter to track down the scammers who stole from her. While the film is a dramatic take, it highlights how emotionally manipulating and destructive these scams can be, especially for seniors who might feel increasingly isolated or vulnerable. Also something to think about. In Thelma, our protagonist is tricked by people impersonating her grandson. As technologies like deepfakes become increasingly common and easy to use, these types of scams will only become more sophisticated. But it's not just phone calls. With technology becoming more advanced, scammers have found creative ways to impersonate trusted figures like police officers, IRS agents, even the Social Security Administration. And this is where things get particularly sneaky. But here's the thing, these scams aren't always so obvious. In some cases, the scammers create fake businesses or pretend to be healthcare providers offering services that sound too good to be true. According to the Florida Department of Elder Affairs, there's a rise in scams involving fake home repairs, fraudulent medical treatments, and even fake charity requests. Now let's talk about a particularly disturbing type of scam called the romance scam. This one's tricky. Imagine being on a dating website, thinking you've met someone wonderful, someone who seems like they're really interested in you. They send sweet messages, engage in thoughtful conversations, and before you know it, they're asking for a little financial help. Maybe it's for an emergency or for a plane ticket to meet in person. According to the AARP, romance scams are escalating in Florida, and they specifically target older individuals who may be lonely or looking for companionship. The truth? There's no someone special on the other side of the screen. They're just a criminal looking to exploit trust. So what can we do about all this? How can we protect our elders from these horrifying scams that prey on their goodwill and trust? Well, folks, the first step is education. If you're an older adult or you have loved ones who fit that description, here are a few key tips to keep in mind. Trust but verify. If you get an unsolicited phone call or email, especially one asking for money, stop and think. Is this really from someone you know? Are they pressuring you to act quickly? If you're unsure, hang up and call them directly using a trusted phone number. Never wire money to someone you don't know. Scammers love asking for money to be sent through a wire transfer, gift cards, or even cryptocurrency. These payments are nearly impossible to trace, so once it's gone, it's gone. Be cautious with personal information. Be careful when sharing your personal information, especially over the phone. Remember, no legitimate agency will ever ask for your social security number or banking info over a casual conversation. Get involved with your loved one's finances. If you're a family member, help your older relatives set up monitoring systems like fraud alerts on their bank accounts and credit cards. You can also help them screen suspicious emails and texts. Report it. If you suspect a scam, report it to the authorities immediately. You can report fraud to the Florida Department of Elder Affairs or call the AARP's Fraud Watch Network for guidance. Finally, let's leave you with this thought. Trust your gut. If something doesn't feel right, whether it's unexpected phone call, email, or an in-person request, don't hesitate to pause. Ask for advice and seek help. As we've seen, scams are getting more sophisticated, but if we stay vigilant, we can help protect those who are most vulnerable and precious to us. Now we're going to talk about our good story of the month. Barbara's life had been upended in one of the most deceitful of ways. Living in Marion County, she and her husband had always dreamed of growing old together in their beloved marital home. However, their world began to unravel when they became entangled with a man who promised to help them stay in their home despite the pressures from their children to move them into assisted living. At the time, her husband was gravely ill and unable to fully comprehend what was happening. Desperate to avoid the fate of being separated, Barbara trusted this man when he professed that he could keep them in their home if they signed a few documents. He never revealed that these documents were property deeds, important documents that would strip them of their home and her husband's other properties. Barbara didn't realize what she was signing, as the man withheld the actual property descriptions from her until after the documents were e-filed with the court. Worse still, he used his 16-year-old daughter as a witness to these deed transfers, which was illegal. To make matters even more sinister, the documents were notarized by a convicted felon, rendering the entire process unlawful. Barbara's husband, unable to fully grasp the situation, never had a chance to fight back. It wasn't long before the man put up eviction notices on the door, housed sexual offenders on the property to intimidate Barbara, and allowed his son to enter the home and take her belongings. His harassment extended into the night, with constant banging on the door. Barbara's world seemed to collapse around her, but there was a glimmer of hope when the CLS legal team filed a quiet title action accusing the man of elder exploitation. Months of tense litigation followed, and with determination, our team filed a motion for summary judgment seeking to prove that the property transfer was fraudulent. In a triumphant victory, Barbara was granted the return of her home. Now with her home restored, Barbara could finally breathe a sigh of relief. She was able to sell the property and purchase a more affordable home where she could live out the rest of her days in peace. Barbara was deeply grateful for the legal intervention that brought her justice, allowing her to regain control of her life, her home, and her future. Because of organizations like CLS and the staff members like those I worked with on this case, such as Paul, Bill, Jackie, Rachel, and Sandy, we were able to undo this terrible harm to a senior couple that were just trying to live their lives. And that wraps it up for this episode of Litigation Corner. If you have a topic you'd like me to cover in the future episode, please write it in the comments. And remember, that when you need help or a friend needs help, Community Legal Services is there for the community. See you next month in the Litigation Corner.